We'll call a regular meeting in the New Ulm Economic Development Authority for Tuesday, December 12th, 2017, 8 a.m. to order. First item on the agenda is roll call. We do have a quorum, so we'll go on to item number 2, approve the minutes of the last meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion on them? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 3 from the New Ulm Economic Development Corporation Coordinator regarding activities during the month of November 2017. Brian?
Brian Toll, New Ulm Economic Development Corporation. You have my November activity report in your packet. I would like to just point out a few things. One is a visit with Lee Cull of CRC Global, and that is a seed manufacturer and trucking business that has leased the former Palm Beach building. That building is full of seeds right now. It's a good thing to have that building full. Another is a visit with Troy Cam of Maverick Blinds, and they manufacture not window blinds but hunting blinds. And every Menards store in the country has Maverick Blinds for sale. So it's a nice little business to have. Also, we've been working with a banker that's representing a client that is going to open a chemical dependency and mental health care clinic in downtown New Ulm. And also calls with Rodrigo Queguida, who is with Midwest Logistics, and he is looking for a new site. Any questions about my November report?
Anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 4 from the EDA staff regarding administrative activities during the month of November 2017. Heather?
Good morning. We'll start with the Section 8 report. Note we have 86 vouchers on the program for the month of November. Payments to housing assistance payments to landlords exceeded disbursements from HUD by $3,400 for the month. Administrative fee disbursements exceeded expenses by $850. Note the unaudited balances on pages 3 and 4 of your report, and note on page 5 we have 88 vouchers on the program as of December 1st with a waiting list of 81. Staff is not currently issuing any more new vouchers, kind of waiting to see what our 2018 funding is going to look like, and I don't know when we'll find that out, so we're kind of in a holding pattern right now. Moving on to the public housing report, revenues have exceeded expenditures by just under $12,000 so far this fiscal year. Broadway House is fully leased with 38 on the waiting list. Family units are fully leased with 23 on the waiting list. We did get notice of a street assessment in the amount of $4,356. We went ahead and processed that payment in full. We received the notice on November 13th, so it was not received in time to be included on the November agenda, and if not paid by December 7th, the cost would have increased to $4,516. If the payment was amortized over 10 years, we would have paid 3.2% interest, which would have increased the cost by another $787. In the past, we've typically paid these smaller assessments in full, so we made the decision to go ahead and pay this one to avoid incurring any additional costs. So just wanted to bring that to your attention, and you'll see that in the claims under the City of New Ulm, so that payment was higher than normal because of that assessment payment. Moving on to the EDA report on page 10, cash assets of $573,741. There was a revenue increase during the month of November due to the sale of the spec house located at 629 Fender Drive. And note, we do have a purchase agreement in place for Lot 6, Block 4, and that sale is scheduled to close on Friday. Moving on to the Property Rehabilitation Loan Program on page 11 of your report, available funds of $284,000. There were 2 new inquiries received last month, and there is an item on the agenda for a $50,000 loan that we'll talk about in a little bit. Moving on then to the Garden Terrace report. Garden Terrace has 85 units leased with 69 on their waiting list. They currently have 3 vacancies. They had 2 turnovers last month, and they do have 2 move-out notices pending for January. Any questions on any of that?
Anybody have any questions for Heather? Nope.
If not, I'll make a motion accepting the report.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 5A, consider adoption of a revised public housing utility allowance schedule. Heather?
All right, this is an annual item. We review these on an annual basis. Occupants in the public housing program pay 30% of their adjusted income toward their rent and utility costs. Residents of the family units are responsible to pay all of their utilities, and the residents at the Broadway House apartments only pay their electric. So we review the utility usage for the prior year and calculate an average to determine current utility allowances. And the amount of the utility allowance is subtracted from the tenant's rent in order to provide them with funds to apply toward their utility bill. We are recommending no changes for Broadway House. Those stay pretty stable year to year, as it is just the electric bill. We pay the heat. That's where you see more fluctuation. So we're recommending keeping the 1-bedroom utility allowance at $30 and the 2-bedroom utility allowance at $35. As far as the family units, no change for the 2-bedroom, slight increase for the 3- and 4-bedroom family units, keeping the 2-bedroom at $128, increasing the 3-bedroom utility allowance to $169, and the 4-bedroom utility allowance to $210. Any questions?
Any questions? Not? Entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the revised public housing utility allowance schedules.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 5B, consider motion authorizing payment to the public housing program claims. As you stated earlier, otherwise, everything's pretty much routine.
Yeah, we did have several turnovers, so there are a lot of flooring bills on here, and then with the addition of the assessment, it is a little higher than normal this month.
And by flooring, is that just like carpeting or?
Actually, when we have a turnover now, if the carpeting is old enough that it's in need of replacement, we actually are replacing it with wood look vinyl flooring throughout. So over time, as we get them all changed over to the carpet-free, it should reduce our maintenance costs in the future because that should last a lot longer than the carpet. And it's a lot easier. We just mop it when we have a turnover and we're ready to move the next person in. So should speed up our turnover time as well.
Good, thank you.
Any more questions, concerns? Seeing none?
I'll make a motion authorizing payment of the public housing claims for December 12th, 2017, and order filed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and the total claims is $34,487.24. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 6A, consider resolution authorizing the executive director to act on behalf of the Economic Development Authority in approving the transfer of title of the property within the area platted as Milford Heights Second Edition.
Yeah, this
Brian?
is, this is a requirement of state law and the development agreement, but go ahead, Dave.
Okay. My name's Dave Schnobrecht. I serve as a Community Development Director. This past August, the authority sold a parcel of property to S&P Development, LLC. They in turn have platted that property as Milford Heights Second Edition. With the sale of the property goes some restrictions on its use. And one of those restrictions is that S&P cannot sell the property without the authority's consent for 1 year from the date of the signing of the warranty deed going forward. So the intent of S&P in platting the property is to sell lots or to sell dwelling units, but in order to do so, during that first year, they would have to come back to you for approval. So what staff is suggesting, in the interests of speeding things up, is that the executive director be authorized to consent to those sales on behalf of the authority. And I included in the staff report that section of the state statutes that has that particular provision.
Thank you.
This would be very similar to what the EDA had done for selling of the lots in the first edition that we constructed the homes and sold. Instead of coming back for every lot or every house we sold, we gave a blanket approval for this area. Go ahead and sell the lots. You don't have to come back. So it's kind of the same thing.
The the sale date was August 15th of 2017, and so that would extend until August 14th of 2018. Then after that, they no longer have to come back for any approval, but during that time period, they do.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Anybody have any questions or concerns?
No.
Seeing none, entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion offering the resolution to waive the reading, authorizing the executive director to act on behalf of the Economic Development Authority in approving the transfer of title to property within the area platted as Milford Heights Second Edition.
I'll second it.
We got a motion and a second, offer the resolution, waive the reading. Any more discussion? Seeing none, Heather?
Commissioner Fix?
You got anything, Dave?
Commissioner Fix?
Yes.
Call the roll, yes.
Commissioner Yanni?
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz?
Yes.
President Schmitz?
Yes, motion carries. Item 6B, consider motion authorizing the staff to make final payment of special assessments for 2016 utility street and alley improvements for the 624 Fender Drive upon closing.
All right. As you know, we received notices from the Brown County Auditor Treasurer in regards to assessments for the 29 lots in the Milford Heights First Edition. At the last meeting, the EDA authorized staff to pay the assessments in full for the 18 lots that have been sold to TIF-eligible buyers and amortize over 10 years the remaining 11 lots. Since that time, we've received a purchase agreement for the lot at 624 Fender Drive. The buyer is TIF-eligible. The sale is scheduled to close on December 15th. So if we go ahead and make this payment in full on or before December 21st, the payment amount would be $27,954.30. If the payment is made after December 21st, the payment amount would be $28,946.87. The EDA could continue paying this assessment over 10 years as planned. If we chose to do that, we would pay 3.2% interest, and the total paid after 10 years would be $32,972.29. The EDA does have adequate cash reserves to make the payment in full now if you so choose. So I just wanted to give you that option.
Makes sense to me.
Me too. It's going to be sold, save $1,000, you know.
Right.
That's $1,000. So with that, I'll make a motion authorizing staff to make a final payment on the special assessment for the 2016 utility street and alley improvements for 624 Fender Drive upon closing.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 6C, consider resolution approving the forgiveness of a loan balance of $526,000 plus any accrued interest due to the EDA Fund 260 from the TIF Fund 365. Nicole?
Commissioners, this is a loan that has been made over the last, well, there's been 9 loans made between the EDA and the TIF Fund 365. And that's just basically to keep the TIF fund in the black because we haven't received enough proceeds from the TIF increments. So in forgiving this payment, what will happen is that the annual interest will go away, and they could still make transfers if needed. It was just being inter-fund transfer that would be authorized by the commission. But without the interest, their need for the loans and the transfers will likely go away within a year or two, depending on how much TIF we receive.
Thank you.
This is just basically recognition that, given the circumstances that we find ourselves in with the Milford Heights, it's never going to pay this back.
Mm-hmm.
So just clean it off the books and move forward.
Anybody have any questions?
I'll make a motion to offer the resolution and waive the reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to offer resolution, waive the reading. Any more discussion? Seeing none, Finance. Heather, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fix? Commissioner Yanni?
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz?
Yes.
President Schmitz?
Yes, motion carries. Item 6D, consider requests for funding for the economic development efforts. Brian?
What you have is a cover sheet for this particular item, and then behind that are some information that's been compiled. The first attachment you see is economic development, industrial development flow chart. That kind of talks about when a prospect comes in, who are all involved in working a prospect. The financials from the primary lending institution to the subsidy proposal, which might be the city or the EDA, resulting in a project, which then ends in all the entities taking off at the end of the project and doing what they have to do, depending upon what they provided to the project. I just thought it'd be kind of interesting, I think to see the big picture. That the Chamber of Commerce plays a role, the EDC plays a role, the city and the EDA plays a role, and the state of Minnesota deed has a role in not all of the economic development projects, but many of the big ones. The EDA has a staff of 1 plus an executive board. The city has 7 people plus the city council. The EDA has 8 staff. The EDA board, and we'd be adding 1 more. And the city provides tax increment, tax abatement, MIF, revolving loan funds, SBA, and rural development, as well as many other things. I just want to give you an idea of what I would see, a proposal play out. The next item is issue sheet 6DA, and that just simply is the city proposal to ask the EDA if they are interested in providing financial assistance to the Economic Development Director, Assistant City Manager position. In the past, the EDA has financially supported it was just the Assistant City Manager position way back when, like in 2011, but the EDA did provide support financially for that position, and it predominantly is because that position did economic development, was in charge of a lot of the personnel issues like health insurance, and worked on EDA activities. So not only do they pay for you pay for Heather and her staff and a piece of me. You also paid for the assistant city manager position. Actually, A was the EDC stuff. I put that stuff first. You received an overview, a PowerPoint presentation at the last meeting where you tabled any action on this. You'll note that the city and the New Ulm Public Utilities Commission have provided funding for the EDC for the past 20 years. Started in about '96. Funding started out at $58,000 per year, split between the city and the PUC. The 2018 request was for $50,000 city and $50,000 PUC. During the process, the city of New Ulm decided to eliminate their portion of the funding in order to help to fund the economic development director. The New Ulm Public Utilities Commission voted to continue funding at this point, the year 2018 at $50,000. As I think everybody's aware, every year review that, so it's not necessarily guaranteed that it will go on and on and on. So in 2018, they'll be looking at creating the 2019 budget, and we'll see how that plays out. You have attached from Jeff Dietrich, President, New Ulm EDC, his correspondence where he is requesting the EDA provide $50,000 as authorized by City Code Section 3.27, Subdivision 2D, which basically says the authority may enter into contracts for the purpose of economic development. And that would be, there's two ways to provide funding to the EDC. One is through a basic no strings attached subsidy, which is capped at $50,000 for any entity such as the EDC. The other way of doing it is to enter into a contract and saying EDC will do this work and we will pay this much money for that work to be done. Very similar to the city of New Ulm has, by law, no ability to donate to the Boy Scouts. We can't take taxpayer dollar and say, here's money, Boy Scouts, have fun, okay? But we can hire the Boy Scouts to clean German Park. We can hire them to go out on a Saturday for $200 and pick up trash for us. And that would be a contract to do a particular piece of work for us for a particular amount of money. Those are legal, and that's what's being referenced here, that the authority may enter into contracts for the purpose. Well, the city can do the same thing, and the PUC can do the same thing. They just can't. They're limited to $50,000 maximum if they just donate money. If it has to be for economic development purposes. As noted, the EDA fund has a current balance of $490,000. You have the letter attached from Jeff Dietrich. The last section, it says we anticipate the NUEDC will continue to work with city staff, including an assistant city manager, as business seek out incentives as TIF, tax abatement, revolving loan funds. This would allow the assistant city manager to maximize his or her time on administration work on economic as an as-needed basis. That may be their perspective. I think our perspective is the economic development director, assistant city manager position will be doing as much economic development, maybe more in the 80-20 ratio or 90-10. The focus is on economic development. 6DB, which is the city part, the economic development efforts, as identified in the original chart, has been shared by many people. It's not just been the New Ulm EDC go do the work. It's been part of my job. In the past, it's been part of the assistant city manager's job. It's been the mayor's job. I've rode with Mr. Toll and the mayor at the time to go visit and city councilors too, to go visit other businesses. You know, it's never, ever been one-stop shop. It's always been an interplay between the EDC, EDA, the city, the Chamber of Commerce, and the state of Minnesota. It's all the players together, working together to provide whatever things that a prospect might need. Some cases, the EDC will do it all themselves. Maybe they'll buy the land and build the building for a prospect, which we typically don't build buildings. Such as the industrial park, airport industrial park, the city helped fund. They gave a loan to the EDC so that they could actually buy the land and develop it. And then when they sold lots, they paid the money back to the city. So this is many hands, working on economic development. And it's sometimes confusing to me where some comments are being made that if the EDC goes away or doesn't do this work, nothing will happen. Well, that's far from the truth. There's many, many people that work on doing economic development in this city. And what the city council has decided to do was to create a position that focuses on economic development. I think primarily because many of the things in the past, which the EDC may have, done, is now being shifted over to the city. EDC, bought the land, developed the land, well, for an industrial park. Well, now that's shifted over to the city. And after a certain point, you kind of go like, well, maybe we should just do it all in-house. Because, if we're going to be doing that, maybe taking that off the plate of the EDC allows them to focus on building spec buildings or something. They have resources. Maybe that's their role. They still can contact people, or people can contact them, and they can walk over, from their office over to the city, just like they have been doing. They need a city revolving loan of $250,000. Nothing really changes in the big scheme of things, as far as I'm concerned, other than just the financing. And that's what we're here to talk about. This item really is two-part. One, the EDA has funded the position we're talking about in the past. Prior to 2011, prior to the assistant city manager retiring. This is a request to refinance a portion of that position. EDC, on the other hand, is saying they lost the $50,000 from the city, and they'd like the EDA to match that so that they can continue on with the same amount of funding from outside their organization. So with that, any questions? And of course, we have the New Ulm EDC present here, that if you want to ask questions of them, I'm sure they'd be more than willing to come to the mic and talk about whatever you wish to talk to them about.
Sure, okay. Before I go into that, though, I guess just for the people up at the table here so they know where this came from originally, is back in 2009 when I was elected to the city council, the mayor asked me to sit in on the committee down at Region 9, Region 9 Commission, take his place. So I did that. When I was down there doing that, I also served for 8 years on the Economic Development Committee for Region 9. During those 8 years that I served on that committee, every time I went to a meeting and we talked about something, we weren't talking really about housing. We were talking about economic development. So as time went on, a couple of years, I finally came into Brian one day and I says, Brian, what we're doing here, I'm on EDA here too, but I says, all we are is housing. I says, when I go down there, I says, we're looking at what the industry wants, what the businesses want. We're looking at training. We're working with the colleges. We're working with the trade schools. We're working with everybody. And I says, when we get back here, we're just housing. And asked what we could do about that, and he says, well, right now, this is just the way it's being done. So we just kind of left the thing go. And I'll be honest, what started triggering me to pursue this is about 2 years ago. We had a gentleman on the economic development here, and after he put in his 6 years, he got up and looked at us, and he says, I hate to say it, but I wasted 6 years of my life, he says. I thought we were going to be economic development, he says. All we are is housing, he says. We haven't done nothing for economic development. But that wasn't our role. And that's where I was headed to, because I thought that's where we needed to be. Then, when came aware that Economic Development Corporation did not have the finances to continue the role that they were, I'm going to say, doing, because we had to fork up $1.4 million to buy some property. And if we're going to spend $1.4 million on property, and after all the 8 years I spent down there, there was no way that I was going to let this go to the outside. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it in-house so we can work together. We can work with housing, we can work with everything. All these people that I served those 8 years down there with Region 9, every one of them was in-house city economic development directors. It was St. Peter, North Mankato, St. James. It was 9 counties that we were representing. And we had probably 15, 20 people that would attend these meetings and workshops and stuff. And to me, it just is a no-brainer. We needed to move it inside. And I guess, like I say, tip the iceberg is when we spend that kind of money, I think it's time now to put it inside. You know, we can do it. I know we can do it. There's not a doubt in my mind. So I guess it's a decision we have to make who we want to fund or whatever, but I'm going to tell you right out, I think I'm definitely in favor of that we're going to fund the city. That's where I want it to go, because I think in all the efforts in the 9 years that I put in, it's a no-brainer. We need to do it. And we need to do it now. I mean, I'd have done it 5 years ago, but now it really makes sense. So I guess, open for discussion.
Well, I guess I'll chime in. I served 9 years on there's a lot of acronyms being thrown out here, and so we get them straight. The New Ulm Economic Development Corp Board, not the EDA. I've been on the EDA several years, but the NUEDC has filled a good role in regard to economic development. It's just kind of a function of where do we go from here, and I think from what I hear and what's taken place, the decision is basically made by the city as far as what the city wants, which direction the city wants to go. So as far as the EDA goes here, we're kind of in a somewhat of a lose-lose situation as far as who do we back or where do we spend our dollars, and I don't know if having two individuals in the same role, if that makes any sense, as far as taxpayer dollars and everything else. And so I don't know, it's just a little bit of a dysfunctional situation in regard to the PUC backing the NUEDC as far as funding, the city not, and we're not city, we're not PUC, but we're a pseudo piece of the city, and now we're the third organization being pulled into this as far as who's going to pay for what and how are our resources best used. Economic development, its tracking of its success is difficult. It's fuzzy as far as what would get done. I mean, how is the city going to do, how is the new position going to create more success than what's been done in the past? I mean, we can't answer that. I don't think you can either, Charlie.
No.
in the interim, I think we should fund the NUEDC. If it's $50,000 or something less than that, I'm not sure. This position isn't filled. As far as, again, back to the new assistant director, city manager position, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems as though that job description has been kind of a evolving or a little bit of moving target. Is that accurate, or as far as the economic development portion of that position, starting from the start, has it always been 80% or?
Well, if anybody remembers, the original job description that came out had a big DRAFT on it, because sometimes you have to start where you left off and work forward. We've done that. On October 26th, the City Personnel Committee adopted the job description as presented. So the current one that you have is the one that's been approved. Draft has been removed from it.
And based on what Brian said, I'm actually on the Personnel Committee, and the Personnel Committee, I don't know, but I would assume it's either been advertised or will be advertised.
It's advertised.
It
It's
is
being advertised right now.
Right. So we made the commitment, we're going forward with it, we're creating the position, and the first thing that we're going to be looking for is somebody with economic development background. And as soon as that person is hired, which should be in the next month or so or whatever, then that person's going to take off running with it, because that is what our goal is. This is what we at the workshop talked about and made a decision, came back to the city council, and the city council approved it, that this is what we're going to do. So, I mean, that is our primary alternative, is to go forward with it. And any spare time that person would have would be used for administration. But otherwise, our goal is to do economic development. That person will be taken into meetings at Region 9. He will be doing everything. That's where we're going. We're going to take over, at least on our property. And then hopefully when we get this person on board, we can get together with New Ulm Economic Corporation and talk about the future, how everything is going to proceed. Because the city council will not be funding anymore. I mean, we kind of drew the line. We made that decision. Whether the PUC decides to or not, that's entirely up to them. But
So if we do fund the 50,000 for the EDC, we may have two people working the same for economic development. Is that correct? It'll be duplication?
There may be duplication. If you go back to the chart, you'll notice that everybody has a role to play. Okay? We are not building spec buildings, although we probably could. We have not built spec buildings like Parker Hannafin. The EDC built that building, leased it to them. They in turn bought it from the EDC. That was a deal that the EDC put together. We weren't necessarily involved. We might have had, I don't know, some financing or TIF or whatever involved in that particular project. I can't remember. Is there going to be some duplication? There might be, but as you understand, the city plays a particular role in the economic development arena. EDC does not go to the state and say, "State, can I get $500,000 MIF loan?" EDC helps fill out the application for that business to apply for a MIF loan. Then they bring it over to the city, and then the city then sends it up to the state. We all have a role to play. I would anticipate that the position that we're filling at this point in time, there's many things that staff has come up with and said, well, here are some things that we may want to consider focusing this individual on that may not be being done by the EDC right now. We may be able to access through rural development daycare funds. The EDC cannot. And to understand that daycare is a part of economic development, you know, we have to say it is, because if you have workers that can't go to work because they have to stay home, I don't know how much the EDC has done on daycare, but there's certain things that we may be able to do that EDC cannot do. You know, any funds from the federal government typically have to come through the governmental entity. EDC can't access those funds. Just doesn't work. So, or it's not the way it's done. So is there a role where there may be some duplication? Yeah, we'll probably have a list of all the available buildings and all the available lots and what the prices are. I'm sure the EDC has the same thing in their office. But there's a lot of things that they can't do that government is the only entity that can do it. And so there may be some overlap, but just because of our responsibilities as a governmental entity, there's a lot of stuff that won't be an overlap. Now, on top of that, the EDC may decide to do, maybe they want to, after they review this, they go, you know, maybe they're going to morph into a county EDC instead of just a New Ulm. Maybe they need to, you know, expand. I don't know what their plans are, you know, in the future. Don't have a clue. Maybe as we go through this, there's going to be opportunities and there's going to be efforts to try and capitalize on those opportunities. And depending on who is best suited or who's legally required to, that's who's going to end up stepping up to the, you know, to the plate to do some of these items, you know, in the future.
Is there anything vice versa that the EDC can do that the city could not?
Well,
Where having
let's
that role would help?
let's put it this way. A prior community I worked for had 3 people in economic development. We did not have an EDC. We did not have an outside organization. We didn't fund anybody except the government, the city itself. It was the mayor, the community development director, and the city administrator, and myself. And, you know, we were responsible for filling a 280-acre business industrial park. And if you go to that community, it's full, right? So I guess my point, I guess, is New Ulm is unique that it actually has an outside entity. You know, there are some, like Greater Mankato Growth in Mankato. There are some communities that have outside economic development. But if you go to Mankato, they also have their internal economic development people, because Greater Mankato Growth can't go and get a MIF loan. Mankato Growth can't do the government side. It has to be somebody from the city. All right. So, do I know exactly what's going to happen? You know, in the first year, in the second year, and the third year, I do not. I think Charlie would agree. We are embarking on a program that is not laid out word for word how much time is going to be spent doing this and how much is going to be doing that. It's going to morph over the first, second, third year to, you know, get our feet solid on what role does EDC play and what role do we play. Maybe we give up certain things and say, that's your role, we're not going to touch that. Maybe we take things and say, we would like to do that. Those discussions haven't been had yet. And I see those occurring as we work through this new internal position and what that position is going to be doing. You know, the job description basically identifies it as heavy in economic development. So,
I think there's a misconception out there. A lot of people think that the position is actually assistant city manager, and then any spare time we got, we're going to go back on to economic development. That's not the way it's going to be done. It's completely, like Brian said, in the reverse. economic development is gonna be number one thing. And are we stepping on new territory? Yes, but I'm not worried about it because it isn't something that's new out there. I mean, there's only a few cities in the state of Minnesota that do it the way we've been doing it, and majority of them are doing it the other way around. So, I mean, it's proven to work, and it will work, and we're gonna hire the person to make it work. That's what it's about. And to spend money to right or wrong to support two people doing basically somewhat the same job, I think is a waste of taxpayer money. I know the PUC made a commitment that they're gonna do it for 1 year, but they're also gonna be paying for our economic development person also. That's just the way it is. So whether it's right or wrong, that's, decision's been made. And, I mean, you can take this thing and flip it as many ways as you want to try to come up with funds, but I think we made a decision, we need to move forward with it.
I think the CD, the CD,
Yeah, I know, it's
you know,
confusing.
it's confusing. Anyway, I know that we need to have economic development continue in this town, and it's vitally important. I mean, that's how we're going to grow if we don't want to become a sleeping community. And I think during this transition, we've got someone coming on board, there's a learning purpose, there's a learning curve that's going to be taking place. And I think to make a commitment for 1 more year to fund this, what we have now, I think it's important. I think we need something strong in here to continue for that year, provided that that will continue to be fully worked on. So I guess that's, you know, whether or not they're going to continue to give their full support in this, then I can see a 1-year commitment for the 50,000.
If
Okay, I'm
the
gonna
EDC was the only entity, I guess I would agree with you, that does economic development. I would agree with you. But I'm here, been doing it for 16 years in New Ulm. Dave Schnobrick's here, he's been doing, you know, the economic development activities at least 50 years or less. So the learning curve only applies if you basically say, we as a city were doing nothing and EDC was doing everything, then we'd have a learning curve. And that's not the case. Never has been the case, never will be the
No,
case.
I didn't mean that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But we aren't hiring somebody that with no knowledge. We're advertising, and we're gonna interview, and we're gonna hire somebody with experience. The thing that bothers me, and nobody will come out and say it, is, are we doing all this for one person, for one job? Is that what it's about? Are we doing it to keep Brian Toll's job? Or are we really doing it for a different reason? And what I'm getting at, anything can happen in this world. We got this job posting up. What if he applies for it? What's EDC gonna do? Are you gonna refill that job with somebody else? Or are you gonna drop it at that time? This is where we're leading. I mean, just be truthful. I mean, we're doing what we think we need to do, what's best for the community, and that's what it's about. I would have never brought this up if I didn't think it was the best thing that we could do. I've had 8 years on economic development.
I just want to make a statement. I did not mean that you guys weren't doing your job. I fully understand that. It's just that if you bring someone from the outside in, there is a learning curve. There's a learning curve in any job like that. Now, if Brian comes in, I'd be so happy for that, you know. But I have not given the thought to, yes, what if Brian decides and you accept and all that stuff, that's great. What does happen to the other position? I guess I offer that up to, you know, to the CDC and just ask them what their thoughts are.
How can you answer that question?
I know. Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying you answered. I'd like to hear it from the EDC board. They're the ones that would make that decision.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Dustin Cross. I'm a board member of the NUEDC, past president. I think a couple of comments are in order. Number one, I don't really think that a job description defines a job. I've never, in all my years, I've been here in Gisselson and Hunter for 23 years, I've never had any concern about a job description. Ms. Fix worked with me for 22 of those years. I don't even know if you had a job description. It doesn't matter what the job description matters. It matters what the supervisor wants that person to do. And at the end of the day, the initial job description had, I think, 19 functions, only 3 of which remotely related to economic development. I do believe that the pushback that came from the community in reaction to what I think was a precipitous decision by the city to change the dynamic and change the paradigm that we've had successfully for 20 years is what happened and why that job description changed. And what we're asking, what we've asked, and what I think Mr. Schwartz and Ms. Fix have alluded to, and what the PUC has alluded to, is to keep the status quo while we define what the new job function relationship is going to be between the new assistant city manager / economic development director, whatever title they have, between the PUC, the city, the EDA, the NUEDC. The NUEDC is not just Brian Tohal. He's our only paid employee, but there are 11 board members, all of whom come from the industry and the economic vitality of this community. And every one of us donates our time and our expertise to try to assist Mr. Tohal in doing economic development. And I'm not saying that that paradigm is the right one. And we have always been very clear that we're happy to have the discussion with the city, with the EDA, with the PUC, and with the chamber, and with any other stakeholders about what economic development in this community should look like. And I agree with Mr. Gromitz. That is a team effort, it is a community effort. It includes Mr. Schnobrick, it includes other city staff, it includes personnel across the range, both voluntary and paid staff. The point is that we had an assistant city manager until I think 2011. During that time, that assistant city manager, we also had a full-time economic development coordinator. And the idea that you're going to split functions between an economic development coordinator and some undefined level of assistant city manager functions is a recipe, we believe, for disaster. And it's a recipe which is going to lead, I think, to a breakdown of our model without a opportunity to make sure that we have everyone on the same page. Do we have those discussions with the city? Of course we do. Does it mean at the end of the day, at the end of a year, does that mean that we eliminate the economic development coordinator position, the paid position at the NUEDC? Certainly it might. It might. I don't think anyone on our board has said that we're absolutely glued on to keeping him in our position. So we are happy to have those discussions. We think that at the end of the day, there are many things that the NUEDC is able to do, both in terms of flexibility, confidentiality, and resources that we can bring to the table that the government simply doesn't have. So what we're asking is for a 1-year stay of execution, if you will, where we are funded and we can have these discussions. A city manager, assistant city manager can come on board. We can talk to that person. We can understand what role they have, what the relationship should be between these entities, and we can then come to a common game plan to move forward. So that's our purpose, Mr. President. We think that a year to fund this makes sense, and it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could interject here, being, like I say, previously being on the New Ulm Economic Development Corp board, a lot of the successes of the NUEDC have hinged on the cooperation and working with Mr. Grummett and Mr. Schnobrick in regard to the city, doing some things that the city can do that enabled NUEDC to finish the deal or get the deal put together. And so it has been a cooperative effort for the past how many years. I do not believe this is a discussion in regard to Brian Toll and his employment. It is a discussion in regard to what Mr. Cross just referred to as what direction we want to go, and maybe a lot of these discussions have taken place already between the city and NUEDC. Being not on that board, I don't know what all's been discussed previously, but I do think that there is still somewhat of a learning curve and another year of funding would bridge that gap for at least the current year.
One thing I keep thinking about that I think you made very clear last month, Brian, was I think we asked was if we don't put any dollars towards the city position, will that position still happen? Last month I saw the agenda, saw the city was asking us for funding. I thought, well, they've made the decision to put this position out there. I assumed you had the needed funding, and you kind of made it clear last month when we discussed it, that would still go on, with or without financial support from us. And I understand that it would be a show of our support for the person in that position by putting funding towards it. But where are, I guess, dollars best spent then towards funding towards that position to offset those expenses or towards the EDC? So I guess that thought also keeps going through my head, that with or without our support, it's still going forward and they're still doing that role, correct?
Correct. Another dynamic that we deal with, particularly like with the city budget and the PUC budget, is just the concept of somebody coming in and asking for funding, okay, and you have to decide. And what we do, even on the small amounts, like with the city budget, whether it's the Concord Singers or whomever, you ask them to provide some reason that they should be funded by taxpayer dollar. Okay, not just because the Concord Singers are great singers or they're great promoters. One could argue that they're great, and but the point is, do they need the money? In order to operate, do they need the money from the taxpayers to exist? And, we sit in here and we're talking about funding the EDC, and I guess for the record, I'd like to know what the resources of the EDC are. Let's face it, if they were sitting on $10 million and they're asking us for $50,000 a year, do they actually need $50,000 of taxpayer money to exist? It's a question. I ask that every year of all my other groups. Provide your budget, tell me what you have for resources in order to determine whether or not you need to receive taxpayer dollars. If you've got nothing in the bank and the city council believes that's a good thing for the community to have, we will subsidize that. We want it for our community. And so this is kind of a double-edged sword, because the city council basically said, we're going to do this, we're going to fund it whether the EDA helps fund this or not, whether the PUC helps fund this position or not, we're going to fund it. Now the PUC said they're going to throw like 10% in, and what I'm proposing is that the EDA put some in because they had financed this position in the past also. But I guess I would be interested in knowing what are the assets of the EDC? Are they can they fund themselves for a year while this process goes through? I'm assuming they can, but nobody's ever told me that they can. If you don't give them the $50,000, what will they do? Will they dip into their reserves and last one more year? Or will they collapse, or will they fold? I don't know that they've made that decision. I've not heard that the board has made that decision. But it all comes down to, you're asking for $50,000 of taxpayer money. What do you have in the bank? What is your need? If you have nothing in the bank, the need is great. If you've got lots of money in the bank, the need may not be so great, and you may have to say, let's see what this next year brings. You seem to have a lot of money. You can get by one more year with your own resources. And I don't know if there's anybody on the EDC that's willing to step up and make that known. The city, on the other hand, has said, we will finance this position, devoid of anybody else. We'll take care of that.
We do have significant assets in just over $1 million. We've been approached within the last week by a business that wants us to build them a building that will cost $1.5 to $2 million. So yes, we have assets, but we have needs for those assets. So in order for us to build that building, we've got to take a significant amount of our assets and put that into that building. And that's why we have that reserve. That reserve has never come from city funding. That's money that we earned on the sale of land and properties our own. That's not city money, never has been, never will be.
So I'm not insinuating it was city money. I'm saying you have assets.
We have assets,
To
but
the
we have a
extent-
need, those assets are needed for projects. That's why we're requesting money from the EDA. is
But if
because
you
those-
went to build this building, would you use $200,000 down and borrow the
haven't-
money, or would
I-
you
I
build the
can't-
whole thing with your own money?
The board has not made that decision.
Okay, so even the whole $1 million isn't probably going to be pledged towards this project. It's going to be a much smaller amount, correct?
I would guess that's true.
Okay, and how many buildings do you build every year?
We don't build a building every year.
And how often do you build a building? Once every 10 years?
We've built 2 additions onto what's now the Beacon building. We built the Parker Hannafin building. And we participated in financing the, oh gosh, I'm going to forget the name. We've done 3 or 4.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's 3 or 4 in the 16 years that I've been here would amount to 1 every 4 years, on average.
4 or 5.
4 or 5 years. So it's not like I've got $1 million and I've got 12 projects stacked up and I need to build buildings, in the next. We don't know. We don't know. Somebody could come in your office this afternoon and say, I want you to build me a building. We just don't know. My point was, when you have organizations that come to take or to request tax dollars, they're usually dirt poor. We're like the last resort. They can't get any revenue anywhere else. And in this particular situation, the EDC does have resources. They could do 1 more year just to see what comes out, and see how it all plays out. They could use their own funding. They could do it if they wanted to. But they're asking the EDA to use taxpayer dollars to help fund their organization when they've got a substantial amount of assets compared to 1 year's worth of, $50,000. So that's my point. I understand, economic development, as stated by, Dustin, is a tough row to hoe. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't know what your needs are. But that doesn't mean you say, okay, we can't spend any of our own money. It's sometimes you got to do what you got to do in order to make things work. And I just bring it up as they do have assets.
The other point I would make is that I don't think the EDC is looking at this as a 1-year deal. I don't think the EDC sees itself going away in 1 year. So we have to think long-term, not just 1 year. We can't fund the budget of the EDC long-term with our assets. That's not going to happen. We don't have those assets.
The other thing that concerns me a little bit is, as it states in their letter too, in the past, we did a $50,000 subsidy, correct?
Well, the city did 50,000, and the
Right.
PUC
That's what I
this
meant.
last year was going to do 50, so that'd be 100,000 total.
But that was a subsidy. Now we have to legally get by this 50,000 because the PUC did 50. We cannot exceed 50,000 within the city. So now we're technically doing a contract if they approve this 50,000.
Correct.
So
The
it's a whole
original
different ballgame again.
contract was with the city, of which the PUC I don't know if they volunteered or not, but they provided that 35% compared to 65%. So that was a deal worked out. But the original contract was with the city. So, and within that contract, you'll note that it says that we will fund that amount as long as the city council wishes to appropriate that amount. And then if you wanted to, you could cancel the contract on whatever, 3 months' notice kind of a thing. Well, we haven't canceled the contract. We just defunded it. Okay? So if the city's taken a position that it's not going to, then the EDC, I think, will need to have a contract. It'd be good to have a contract with the PUC and also the EDA if they wanted to fund it. Have a contract with both entities.
Because otherwise, you're just giving them the money and you got no say of what it's used for. You got
Right.
no documentation of any kind.
There's even been some discussion, since this originally came up, that if we're going to provide funding for, the EDC, into the future, well, maybe part of that contract has to state that if you have, if you're receiving money from the PUC and you're receiving money from the EDA, that a member of the EDA and a member of the PUC needs to have a seat at the table. And that kind of takes away the other aspect of, here's the money, and we have no say in how the money gets spent. That's never been brought up. It has been talked about by people who I've talked in the community that said, well, how come the city and the PUC never had any seat at the table? That's the way it was done back in '96. They didn't make that decision. But if we're going to have new contracts, that could be a requirement. You want our money, we want a seat at the table. I mean, it doesn't always have to be just status quo. You have an opportunity to say, okay, we understand, here's the funding, you want it to come from us, but here's what we want in return. It's not just gonna be a blank, not a blank check, but a $50,000 check. We wanna be part of that, of your organization. If you're getting the money from us, it may be reasonable. People have commented that to me, and so I just put it out there as something you may want to consider.
I guess up front, where I'm coming from is I'm chairman of economic development, and I can not see us taking our finances and giving it to somebody else when we ourselves are the ones that are moving forward with a whole new scenario. This person that we're hiring is going to be here. We should be funding this person because that is our goal. To me, it don't make any sense to go any other direction.
I see a little bit of cloudiness for the next year. Not cloudiness, but just a little, it's not clear cut. It's not black and white. There's things still happening. And I think we need to continue on being strong in our economic development, at least for the next year. We have a choice to do nothing. We don't have to give anybody any money. That's our choice. But do we want to continue to be strong in economic development?
So do we want to fund both of them? Is that what you're saying? We're going to fund the position we created and we're going to fund EDC?
Choice to do nothing.
Yeah, we could do nothing.
Right.
Well, basically, the decision has been made. The city is going to hire assistant manager position, of which that job description is 80% economic development. And that's being done regardless of the EDA. Like Ms. Yanni mentioned, the EDA helping to fund that or not. And so I don't know, I guess I'm on the other hand, I'm not really interested in funding two of the same.
Me either. And I know this is taxpayer money, but I really think the city of New Ulm needs to continue to be strong in economic development.
Nobody said we weren't going to
I
be
know
strong.
that, I know that,
It-
but
Everybody is assuming we're gonna have a huge learning curve, and if you hire the right person, it's not gonna be that big a learning curve. I
well,
think what we need to do is we need to, once it's all done, said and done, and the person's on board, like I made a comment earlier, is we need to sit down with Brian and the board and look at where they plan on going and what we need to do, and get this thing all rolled together so we can continue on. And, you know, we need their support, and they need our support. It's a work in progress. We'll have to do it. And we want to do it.
we have to work as a team. I mean,
Right.
everybody's
We
got to
know-
work
right.
together to grow. I'm throwing this out there, I'm gonna make a motion to fund the EDC for $50,000 for a 1-year increment. That's it, 1 year.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to support Economic Development Corporation for 1 year for $50,000. Any more discussion?
What, Mr. Grumman's mentioned a seat on the board in regard, I mean, is it something whereby someone from this commission, I mean, no, it's not just that simple. I suppose bylaws, things had to be changed, but someone from this commission would partake in the annual EDC board meetings and it contingent upon that
Yeah,
funding?
staff has been attending. I mean, I used to attend, but I felt it was more important that my community development director attend the EDC meetings. But I think from a perspective of if it's your money, you can place any strings on it that you wish to place on it. I would recommend, because it was one of the things that John Q. Public talked to me about, was that how come we didn't, we're giving $100,000 to an organization and we don't even have a seat on the board. And I said, well, that's the way it was done. That can always be changed. Now, does that fit with their bylaws and their membership? It'll have to, if they want the money. They'll have to change their board makeup to allow, a seat. If they don't want the money, then they say, we're not going to change our board and you can keep your money. But if they want it and you require a seat at the table, then you do. The state does this to us all the time. You want their money, you gotta do what they tell you to do. And this is no different. If you want to provide the $50,000, if you want a seat at the table, you have to tell them that. That's the way the contract would be written up, the agreement, and you go from there.
Well, based on what you said, Brian, I think a contract would have to be written up. I think we'd want to have somebody on the board. There's not a doubt in my mind if this is what we decide to do. And, I think Roger would be the one that we would
Right.
get involved and get this thing
City
written
attorney
up.
would prepare it.
Right. But do we want to write up that contract before we agree to the 50,000 to see if everybody's on board with it?
Well, you have, in your packet, you have the old 1996 contract.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine, I don't know, Brian, have you put any effort into looking at if anything needs to be changed in that contract? I mean, your correspondence from the EDC basically says they want to enter into a contract with the EDA. Is there anything that you see that needs to be changed?
Well, we would likely modify the.
Could you come to the microphone?
I could see us modifying the contract to clarify what the EDA decides.
Yeah, in a term, I think the PUC said, 1 year, and the EDA is kind of saying, let's do it for 1 year and see what happens after that, so.
I
just
could
be a
envision
1-year
an-
contract that,
I can envision an addendum.
yep. So it's just whatever the EDA wants to put as a requirement. You want to take the money, we want a seat on the board, and would include that in. If you don't want to see it on the board and let it go just like it's been currently being operated, then you don't have to change anything. We would, I think, like I say, this goes back to 1996 and maybe terminated within 90 days before the end of any annual period. So I guess I would recommend that the city attorney prepare either an addendum or a new contract that basically says the same thing, that just says, this is for 2018. And then if they decide to do something in 2019 that's different, then you create a new contract and move forward. Or not have a contract. So the motioner, if they wanted to do that, would need to amend their motion to make that a requirement, whatever that item might be, and the seconder would have to accept that.
Sue?
Thoughts on being on their board?
Well, I think we need to have somebody on the board if this is what we're gonna go through with. So we know what's taking place, and if anything, it's gonna make the working together relationship a lot better for carrying on in the future too, if we have somebody on the board.
I think one of the things that, even while I was there, attending those meetings and Mr. Schnobeck, was that, at some time during the meeting, since we're not a member, you're asked to leave. If you have a member on the board, you're gonna know what's going on. Because we, as staff, we had no clue what was being said when the door closed, because we were out in the hallway.
When are your meetings scheduled?
We meet the second Thursday of every month at noon at the Kaiserhof.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? If the EDA wanted someone on the board, would it have to be a commissioner, or could it be the new EDD ACM?
It could be whomever the EDA wishes to appoint to represent the EDA on that board.
I guess I would recommend somebody from the commission. I don't think we'd want to take the new person and put him on that board. That would be my suggestion anyway.
I guess the consensus seems to be that we have this time period that we need to continue with the economic development efforts, and if to find the right person as far as the assistant city manager position, that could take, who knows? I mean, that could take 3 months, 6 months. Unless it's different than our world as far as hiring the right people. That takes some time, and so I think bridging that gap makes some sense. And if it's fully funded at $50,000 or something different, I'm not sure, but I guess the motion is on the table at 50.
So could you see yourself on the board if we would put that in for the CDW? I wouldn't be able to make those, well, probably could, but I'm just saying we would have to have someone who would be in attendance. Do you
So
feel it's necessary?
As far as someone being there, or
Someone being on the board?
well, I mentioned it because that seems to be an issue with as far as accountability, or as far as the city. As far as this previous subsidy, that no one has been on the board from the PUC or the city, and so that's why I mentioned that. Personally, maybe it's not necessary as far as, but if it's a hot button with anybody else on this board or with the city of New Ulm, and if it should be contingency, then we could make that happen.
We could make a include that in a motion. We don't have to pick that person today.
Right.
We can pick it at a later meeting too, maybe Les or Dan would want to serve on it too. We don't know, so.
How many times within the last, you meet once a month, correct? So how many times have you had a closed meeting or asked people to walk out? Are your meetings open to the public?
No.
Okay, they're strictly for the
I think that probably once or twice a year, we've asked non-board members to leave, once or twice a year.
due to confidentiality or?
Yes. Yep. There are occasions when we're working with a business that they ask to be held confidential, that it not be made public that they're looking at doing something, and so we need to keep that confidence.
And that's understandable.
Pardon?
That's understandable.
Yeah.
It's understandable. Sorry, I've got a cold.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if we break that confidence once, we'll lose the trust of businesses. And we've worked hard over the last 21 years plus to build confidence with the businesses. That takes time. That's not an automatic. That doesn't come, a new person being hired doesn't have that confidence. So we've worked very hard to maintain confidence of the businesses.
Thank you.
In general, that doesn't necessarily apply for the city part, because just because we're in a meeting, a private meeting, anybody on the EDA, if they're there, it can still be confidential. It's when they submit a written document to the city offices here that document then becomes public information. So I don't see a confidentiality issue, to be quite honest. It's just
So-
not there.
Why ask people to leave then?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's their decision.
Just curious.
Yeah, this is Dustin Cross again. I don't recall that ever happening, Brian, actually. I don't think that we've ever actually closed the meeting for the reason he just said. He keeps things confidential at his level and generally is very circumspect about sharing that with the board until it becomes public information. The only times I recall we ever close a meeting is to discuss Brian's performance. When his job review, when we're discussing his job performance and making employment decisions regarding him. Dave Schnobrick and Audra Shanman from the chamber sit in on most every meeting, or a representative from the chamber. And it's very rare, as I say, probably once a year, maybe twice at the most, that we ever ask the non-board members to leave. But I don't believe, speaking on my own behalf, I have absolutely no objection to an EDA member. I think it's a great idea to have an EDA member join our board. I doubt anybody would have an issue with it. So, thank you.
Okay. I can amend my motion. I'll amend my motion then to,
With the subsidy require that the EDA have a
seat.
seat
On the city.
on the EDC board.
Absolutely. There you go.
Second.
You amend your second? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. I oppose. Call the roll.
All right. I'm running out of room to take notes here. Commissioner Fix,
Yes.
Commissioner Yanni,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Yes.
and President Schmitz.
No. Motion carries. We'll go on to item 7A. Consider motion approving with conditions a $50,000 loan from the Commercial Property Loan Program to FN Properties LLC. Dave?
Members of the authority, the authority has had a commercial loan program for a number of years now. One of the requirements of that loan program is that any loan request in excess of $25,000 needs to be approved by the board. We have received a request from Paul Nayers and Mona Fracke on behalf of FN Properties LLC. This property is located at 225 North Minnesota Street. Pub and Patio was the most recent occupant of that particular property. They have a total project cost of $350,000, which includes acquisition of the property. The project would involve interior remodeling improvements and HVAC work. Both of those activities are eligible for our loan program. Bank Midwest will finance this particular project. The total loan amount is $290,000, which includes the EDA loan of $50,000. Bank Midwest has provided us with an appraisal of the property that was performed by Brovold and Company out of Mankato. In that appraisal, they indicate that the property has an as-is value effective October 17th of this year of $260,000 and an as-proposed value, which is after the improvements are made, of $320,000. Using those numbers, in the staff report, we've provided an identification of the amount of security that would remain, and there would be sufficient equity to cover the authority's loan amount. I would note that the Brown County Assessor has a current estimated market value for the property of approximately $120,000.
Thank you. Any questions for Dave?
I would just like to point out that this is an example of something the EDC will not do, and that when you talk about economic development activities, there's more to it than just one entity. This is, the EDA is the only one besides the marketplace that's going to get involved in this particular economic development project. Now, some people say that retail or commercial is not economic development, but if you're a small city and you need a grocery store, that grocery store is economic development. So again, I don't need to beat this to death, but the EDA is involved, the city is involved on these kinds of deals, and the EDA or the EDC is not involved when it comes to these type of things. So it takes everybody, it takes a community to do economic development, and this is just one piece of it.
I should note, and I failed to do so, that the owners are proposing to turn this into a wine bar, and the our particular portion of the loan would be used for the addition of a kitchen and associated improvements. And I might note that Shannon Hillesheim of Bank Midwest is also here, and so if you have any questions of her, she is also a resource.
Anybody have any questions? I guess the reason it's back here is because up to 25,000 you can go without our approval. They're asking for 50,000, so, and this is one of the roles that we do play as economic development, so I guess it's.
And I think there's adequate funds, in the account to do this, so.
Is that our max, 50,000,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the city revolving loan fund has a $250,000 maximum, although the city council did exceed that and go to $350,000 a few years back mainly because the state of Minnesota promised money and then they backed out. And then in order to get the deal done, the city upped their loan to make it happen.
It was approximately 2 years ago that we increased the loan limit from 25,000 to 50,000.
Yeah.
And I would say we've made maybe 4 or 5 loans of this amount since that time.
I think it was a recognition that 25 was kind of small if you're going to be involved in some of these projects. So I go through the work for $25,000. It just seemed like a lot of effort for not a lot of return. So the EDA increased it to 50, and it's had some use.
Did I see that we would get a note and mortgage on that? Did I read that someplace?
Yeah. As with all of the loans that we make, there would be a promissory note and mortgage, and then we also would get personal guarantees from the 2 individuals that make up the LLC.
So what's personal guarantee do for us?
Well, if there are loan problems, as individuals, they are, I guess, guaranteeing that that they're responsible.
If you go through the process, there are certain things that are not allowed to be attached, even on a personal guarantee. I think their house, their retirement account, you just can't touch them. But I think what it shows is, their desire to personally back up the loan.
Right.
And sometimes you don't get anything out of it, but at least it shows their support.
Shannon has first mortgage, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditions for a $50,000 loan from the Commercial Property Loan Program to FN Properties, LLC.
Second.
We got a motion and a second proving the $50,000 loan. Any more discussion? Seeing none? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. With no more business, meeting adjourned.